Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing a really focused analysis, looking into the philosophy behind a specific communication training program. Yeah, we've gathered sources that lay out the ideas for confident connections, the one led by Chris and Joyce Whitman. Our mission really is to drill down into their basic approach. It's not just about learning how they teach, talking to people. We want to understand the core philosophy that they claim makes them different from, well, all the self-help and, let's be honest, dating advice channels out there. And the sources, they're pretty clear about who they're talking to. It seems aimed at guys who kind of freeze up or get stuck, overthinking every word when they try to connect.
Right. And you can see their main point straight away. It's like their motto. They say it constantly.
Yeah.
This isn't a pickup channel. It's a confidence channel. So they're defining themselves by what they aren't, setting up that contrast right from the get-go. And what's important, I think, is they tie this to authenticity. They talk about spending years helping people build natural confidence, focusing on connection, specifically without using games or manipulation. So they're promising basically a path to self-assurance that doesn't involve, faking it.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that a bit. If the whole idea is rejecting the pickup thing, what does that mean in practice? What are they actually saying no to? The source material is really firm on this. It promises you, the listener, that you absolutely will not learn cheesy lines. And that feels like more than just marketing, If you're told you won't get lines, you kind of have to look elsewhere, inside yourself, presumably. The stated goal is for you to become confident enough that you don't need them, which shifts the whole thing, doesn't it? Success isn't about the line anymore. It's about your internal state.
Exactly. And if you think about social dynamics, rejecting that external script is a huge pivot philosophically. Traditional pickup advice often focuses on optimizing the external stuff, the perfect line, the right move, the calculated approach. This program seems to flip that entirely. It's all about the internal, the self-assurance, the grounded feeling, that mindset shift. They're kind of arguing that relying on a line actually creates more anxiety because you're always performing, right? You're trying to convince someone you're the smooth person, maybe when you're not feeling it, and that pressure causes the freeze up. So their approach, talking about approaching women respectfully, it suggests the inner work has to come first, before the action can even work. It's like they're selling self-acceptance, not a costume.
Okay, but that brings up a really key question, and it's one our listeners definitely want answered. If they ditch the scripts, what do they teach? Where's the actual how-to for the person who literally freezes up and can't get a word out? And this is where it gets interesting, because the sources do list a specific curriculum. They start with the fundamentals, which is fair enough, how to approach a woman in real life, and, crucially, how to start conversations without sounding weird. That's sort of the baseline, getting from 0 to 1.
And this is where you have to look closely. How do you teach someone not to sound weird without giving them something to say?
Well, the material suggests they lean heavily on contextual relevance. So commenting on the immediate environment, the situation you're both in, rather than using pre-planned lines. The framework isn't what to say, it's more about how to notice things around you. Observation over fabrication. Okay, that makes sense. Then the curriculum seems to move into slightly more advanced skills, things like how to flirt naturally. And a big one for them seems to be building confidence and what they call masculine presence. But the part of the curriculum that really stood out to me, the bit I think is most revealing philosophically, is their promise to teach men how to understand attraction without chasing it.
Yeah, that phrase, without chasing it, that's doing a lot of work there philosophically. It completely reframes the goal, doesn't it? If you're not chasing attraction, what are you doing? You're allowing it, inviting it. It shifts the measure of success away from getting a specific outcome, like a phone number or a date, towards successfully maintaining a particular internal state, like calmness or presence. So in their framework, success isn't necessarily about winning the woman over, it's about winning over your own anxiety. They seem to teach you to define success by your willingness to just approach and be present, whatever happens. And that's what they suggest generates natural flirting. It's flirting without that desperate need for it to work out.
I see the logic there, but let me just push back a little, play the skeptic for a second. Doesn't that risk sounding a bit like, vague self-help talk? When we talk about confidence and masculine presence, those terms can mean almost anything. Do the sources give a more concrete definition, something different from the usual?
They do, actually, and this is important. It answers your point directly. They are very clear that confidence for them is not about being smooth or flashy, not at all. Their definition uses 4 specific qualities. Confidence is being calm, present, respectful, and sure of yourself. Notice how all four of those, calm, present, respectful, sure of yourself, they're all measures of internal stability, right? Not external showmanship. They're focusing on the man's ability to, like, regulate his own nervous system, manage his intentions. Respectful behavior then becomes the natural result of feeling genuinely sure of yourself. If you're truly self-assured, you don't need to be disrespectful or overly dominant to make a point.
Okay, that connects perfectly to the next piece.
Yeah.
The mechanism, the why. If I've ditched the script and I'm just focused on being calm and present, why does that state supposedly work better than, say, a really clever joke or a practiced opening line? What's the secret sauce there?
Well, what's fascinating here is how they frame attraction. They move beyond just psychology into something they describe almost like energy. They basically claim that women respond directly to energy. The exact wording in the sources is pretty direct about it. When a man is confident, centered, grounded, he becomes attractive. So they're defining attraction as a kind of byproduct of internal alignment. When they use words like centered and grounded, they seem to mean that psychological state where your thoughts, feelings, and actions are all lined up. You're not stuck worrying about the past failure or the future response. You're just there in the interaction.
So what they're basically arguing is that the inner anxiety you feel when you're trying to deliver a pickup line, that anxiety is actually detectable. And that lack of centeredness kind of undermines the line itself, no matter how good it is on paper.
Exactly that. The sources emphasize that women can feel that energy. You could think of it like heat leaking out. If you're pretending to be confident, but inside you're terrified of rejection, that fear supposedly leaks out and sort of sets the tone for the whole interaction, canceling out whatever cool thing you tried to say. And this is a pretty radical shift because success moves away from being about external delivery like a performance art and becomes about internal state management, almost like a meditative practice. The training focuses on helping men build confidence from the inside out. The idea is that attraction happens more naturally as a result of being in that secure, grounded state. You stop chasing attraction because your internal state is ideally consistently generating it anyway.
Okay, so to make that really practical for someone listening, if I'm the person who freezes up, how does being centered actually translate into having a conversation? Do they contrast that state with the freeze-up state?
Yeah, they contrast it by defining the behaviors of the guy who isn't centered. The man who freezes up, he's totally future-focused, right? He's calculating the odds of rejection, trying to predict the next response, mentally running through a script. That's the complete opposite of being present. The centered man, on the other hand, is taught to focus only on the immediate moment. The tone of her voice, the shared environment, maybe a genuine feeling he has about the conversation right then. And this allows for communication that's more authentic, even if it's a bit imperfect. The sources strongly suggest that authenticity, even if you fumble a word or two, is way more attractive than some kind of smooth, rehearsed act that isn't real. The goal is to be real, not necessarily right.
That does make the whole thing seem much more achievable, actually, less intimidating. It simplifies the goal down to something you can almost measure internally, like calmness, rather than an unpredictable external result like getting the perfect response. So we kind of synthesize this whole philosophy. The sources lay out a pretty neat three-part mission statement for confident connections. It uses these paired concepts we've been talking about. These really work like a roadmap for the listener. First, they say they aim to help men connect, not convince, which reinforces that whole idea that real connection has to be mutual. It's not a sales pitch. Second, they want to help you approach without anxiety. That directly targets the biggest hurdle for their main audience, right? And it shows that managing your internal state comes before you can take action effectively. And third, they want you to build confidence, not ego. And that's a really critical distinction, separating genuine self-assurance from just being arrogant or self-important. It keeps that respectful piece front and center.
That three-part statement, yeah, it's a great summary. It really ties together the mindset part, rejecting anxiety and ego, with the action part, approaching and connecting. And for the listener who's looking for the bottom line, this philosophy gives a really clear call to action. The program totally rejects the idea that you can just passively learn confidence by, watching videos. It hammers home the idea that you need to actually do something. The hosts often close out their material with the mantra, "Confidence grows when you take action." It's an explicit instruction. Turn understanding into movement. Rely on the confidence you're building yourself, not on borrowed lines. So the final kind of unifying message, wrapping up everything we've covered, is pretty simple. Confidence, not pickup lines.
That really is the core takeaway from these sources, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
For you, the listener, the key insight is that this communication philosophy makes a strong case for authenticity over performance. The goal gets redefined. It's not about chasing external validation with cheesy lines, but about cultivating internal self-assurance, being calm, present, and respectful.
Yeah, and this brings up a really important question for you to think about moving forward because this framework, it potentially goes way beyond just initial attraction or dating. If this philosophy holds water, if authentic connection really does stem from being centered and grounded, meaning your internal state is the main thing people respond to, then how might shifting your focus, shifting from worrying about what you say to focusing more on how you feel internally, how might that change things? Not just dating, but maybe all areas of your communication. Think about how prioritizing that internal groundedness instead of relying on external scripts or performing, how could that impact your next job interview? Or a tough negotiation, or even giving a presentation. This deep dive reveals a philosophy that might be packaged for dating, but its core lessons on managing your internal state.